All right, maybe I don't hate Sony. YouTube, what is good? We're getting an early start on today's vlog. Your boy is sleepy right now because you guys know getting up early is not necessarily my thing, but today I'm really excited about this vlog. It should be a fun one. We're about to head into Chrome Yellow right now to meet up with Chris' house. So if this happens to be your first episode, there's something you should know about me. I'm a little bit of a Sony hater. So I've tried some Sony cameras in the past and wasn't a huge fan of them, but today I want to give it another shot because going into 2019, I really want to lock down the gear I'll be using for this YouTube channel. This year, I did a lot of experimenting, trying to figure out what would work best, and I don't want to do that again next year. This YouTube channel, it's a little bit complicated because it's a YouTube channel about the process and story behind photos. So I really need a video camera and a photo camera, and I have to be carrying them at the same time. It's a little bit complicated. So that is one of the reasons we are linking up with Chris' house today. The main reason, I haven't seen Chris in a while, I just want to hang out with him and catch up, but figured today would be a good chance to try out his Sony camera and see if it might fit well for this channel. I've honestly never used the Sony full frame, so it'll be cool to try it out. I'm gonna get some shots with it, gonna get some video with it, and then at the end, I'll give you my thoughts. Today, we're filming on the Fujifilm X-H1, and maybe we'll do some comparison with that as well. But first, your boy needs some coffee from Chrome Yellow. Did you get it? Just quick explanation. What do you like about this Sony that you think I'm gonna like?
Video specs on it, internal sensor stabilization, the amount of lenses you can adapt. My Canon lenses on a Sony camera and not really suffer autofocus issues.
Is that small rigs?
No, this is a nicey rig, which was cheaper than a small rig.
All right, so you heard it. Chris loves the Sony. You're gonna find out if I do. The first location we're going to is up here, and Chris is using a 24-70 Canon adapted, so that's what I'll be using, I guess. First things first, what's going on with this? Is this for focusing?
That's focus peaking on manual. Right here is adjusting aperture, shutter speed, and then just click right for ISO.
Touchscreen?
Autofocus only.
Oh, is this thing silent shutter too?
Yeah.
All right, maybe I don't hate Sony. It's not bad, actually. Kind of like the way this thing feels in hand. We might be getting kicked out of here according to Chris, but that's all good. We're gonna just try a few more shots and we'll just keep it rolling.
Hey guys.
Chris was right, we got kicked out of that first location. We're gonna walk to a second place to test out this camera. Here's what I think we're gonna do. On the way, I'm gonna take the Sony, I'm gonna film a B-roll sequence, put it in the vlog, you'll get to see what the footage looks like. Catch you guys in a minute. So since we got kicked out of that first location, this is where we're gonna do the majority of our camera testing. It's a pretty cool little setup. We can shoot straight this way. There's a cool photo this way as well. I don't know how people do camera reviews because this is like not even a review and it is so complicated and technical and hard to film. Salute to you guys. Salute the camera reviewers. Is this in photo mode right now?
No, video mode.
All right, pause. We gotta figure out how do you change ISO on this? You click right here.
Yeah, so how it says ISO.
Okay.
And you click on that.
Okay, cool. So first shot is just gonna be a test photo straight down this way. Chris holding my camera will be the subject. Chris is like the camera operator because I have literally no idea how this thing works. that concludes today's shoot. We just stopped at Chrome to dump files onto my computer. Shout out to Chris once again for helping today's video. Make sure you follow him at Chris House. Up until today, the only Sony cameras I'd used were Sony crop sensors, things like the A6100, 6300. Today was the first time I used one of their real full frame cameras. I gotta say, didn't hate it. Kind of enjoyed it, honestly, which is a little bit surprising. You know, I really liked the build quality. I like the way it felt in hand, and Chris primarily uses his for video, so it had the cage on it, and he had the Canon lens because he hasn't fully jumped to Sony. So I can imagine if you're using like a Sony G Master, you don't have the cage on there. It's got to be a pretty good experience. Definitely interesting. I'm gonna have to go through the footage. I'm gonna have to check everything out, and then we'll get back together and come to a conclusion. Alright, so now that I've had one day to go through the photo and go through the video, I'm ready to give you guys my thoughts, my perspective on Sony, the Sony A7 III from a now former Sony hater. But first, I gotta thank the sponsor of today's episode, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, business, technology, photography, and many more. Premium memberships give you unlimited access to high quality classes from experts working in the field so you can improve your skill, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Skillshare really has something for everyone. Y'all know my main interest is photography, and one class that stood out to me on Skillshare is taught by Chris Burkhardt. He is phenomenal, an amazing photographer, and it just goes to show the quality of instructors you can get on Skillshare. You can get people who are at the top of their field, basically teaching you all the secrets of the trade. Skillshare has an amazing opportunity for the viewers on this channel. The first 500 people to go to the link in the description on this video get 2 months of Skillshare for free. It's an awesome deal. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring the video. Now let's talk about the Sony A7 III, the photos, the video, my thoughts on the whole thing. There's a lot to unpack here. So like I mentioned in the video, yesterday was the first time I've ever used a Sony full frame camera of any type. It's actually, I think, been 2 years since I even picked up or played around with any type of Sony camera. My experience before was all on crop sensor cameras, and the lenses I was using at the time too were pretty basic, none of the high-end lenses. But through my experiences with those cameras, I had this notion in my head that the image quality on Sony cameras was like overly digital is how I would describe it. It was like the photos had no soul. It was like you're getting a digital rendering of what you're seeing as opposed to a real photograph that had, you know, an essence to it. And it's pretty obvious to me after this quick test with the Sony A7 III that I need to get that idea out of my head. It's pretty obvious you can get a good quality photo from a Sony camera. So here's a few things that really stood out to me. One, love the fact that it has a silent shutter. If you're into street photography, that is a big piece. And actually for wedding shooters as well, a completely silent shutter is, you know, a big plus. Also, the dynamic range was fantastic. You could really bring up your shadows, boost your shadows. One thing for me though, once you start really boosting your shadows, you do kind of get that overly digital look, and I understand some people like that, some people want that, especially if you're doing like HDR style stuff where you're pushing the shadows, bringing down the highlights. But for me, I don't want to push the shadows, and the way the detail looks in the shadow isn't my favorite, but it is what it is. It's not a deal breaker. I also love the build quality of the camera. This thing is built like a tank. It felt nice in the hand. It was awesome. You know, that was like one of my favorite parts. I'm big on the way things feel and operate, and that camera definitely had it put together correctly. So as for the photos we made while we were out shooting, it's funny, this video was completely impromptu. I planned on meeting up with Chris and going out and doing like street photography and just shooting in the city, and at the last minute decided, you know what, bro, let me test that thing out today. Let's make a video about this. And the learning curve was definitely there. When we were out, I kept having to ask Chris over and over, like, dude, how do I do this? What is this? How do I change this on this camera? So the photos themselves, they're not anything too crazy. They're really just test shots, but here are the before and after on them. I think they edited well. They stood up exactly how I would expect them to. The colors are different. When I say the colors are different, I don't necessarily mean that as bad. Just for me, I wasn't used to them, and when I'm editing them, it edits completely different than I'm used to. This can be attributed to a few things. One, obviously this Fujifilm camera I've had for almost a year now. Everything is customized as far as the picture profiles go. I know what works, what doesn't work, how it color grades, and the Sony I had for 1.5 hours, and I was using whatever picture profile Chris put on the camera. So I don't think I can give you any type of like answer of, oh, it's bad, oh, it's good. I just think it's not what I was used to, and if you saw it in the video, it definitely came across that way. I will say though, I was pretty impressed at how well the Fujifilm video footage held up next to the Sony video footage, but once again, that could be a matter of me actually knowing how to use this camera as opposed to me having to ask Chris basically a question every 25 seconds. How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? That video was almost a video all about the learning curve of trying out a new camera. But as for my takeaway, I'm definitely not a Sony hater anymore, all right? I was never a huge Sony hater. It was always just kind of like a troll, something fun. I didn't like the cameras. I had no plans to use one in the future, but now it's possibly something I would consider, especially for video. This YouTube channel, can get really complicated, like I mentioned, because I want the focus to always be on photos, but I also want the video to be good. And I find myself always wanting to flip back and forth between one camera for video, one camera for photo. I want a smaller camera for photo. It's just all these different questions. So I wanted to try out the Sony, get an idea of where it could possibly fit, and I think it could do both very well. I see why so many people who do photo and video just pick Sony as their one camera. As for me though, I think for now I'm going to stick to Fuji as my video camera just because I don't want the hassle of selling this whole thing. I just sold a bunch of Fujifilm stuff to make room for some changes going into next year. Like I said, we'll see what happens. Don't think I'll be switching to Sony, but you never know. They do have that one small point-and-shoot style camera with a 35mm. What is it called? The RX1, R2. I don't know. They do need to work on their names because they're super confusing. Final consensus, I'm no longer a Sony hater. I think they make good stuff, and it was cool to try one out. If you have any recommendations for me or anyone who could be watching this video, if you're like a Sony expert, drop it in the comments and let people know what they need to know, because I really don't know anything. Like I said, it's my first time using one in over 2 years, but I enjoyed it. Y'all are the truth. If you enjoyed today's video, if you want more photography content, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button for me. Y'all are the best. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time.